Hi, and thanks for joining us in this part 4 of Darren and Amy's van build. In our last vlog, we completed the double bed frame over garage, building to allow ample height to fit mountain bikes. We also fitted an insulated floor, insulated sidewalls, wheel arch covers, and a 60-litre over wheel arch tank. In this vlog, we will be insulating our ceiling and fitting acoustic panelling, insulating and adding sidewalls and window frames to our bed area, fitting overhead lockers, and a rear back door to bed divide. Now, it's no big secret that we're a big fan of using sheep wool as part of a fully venting insulation system. We adopted this in our van build almost 5 years ago now and have had zero issues with condensation and damp. I did a vlog a short while ago called What No Vapour Barrier, and I'll put a link in the description below if you want to learn more about using such a system. So trusted now in all of our builds, putting up the ceiling, insulation and coverings is one of the first jobs we do so the wool can start doing its thing, keeping us condensation and drip free as we work on the van throughout the year. Mounting the insulation and coverings, we make use of the van's roof supports. However, there is no support at the rear of the van. This I remedy by removing a support strip from a scrap van, cleaning it and bonding it in place with polyurethane sealant. Supports keep it in place to bond overnight for a firm fix. We then cut strips of 12mm ply to mount to the overhead beams of the van. Each strip is cut to overlap the beam, so when we screw the ply to the beam and then the covering to the ply, we can avoid a thermal bridge linking any conductive material from the outside of the van to the in. All ply supports are varnished back and front to protect from the humid environment of a small closed space. I then offer each piece of ply up to the beams to mark locations suitable for screwing through to avoid any of the many holes that feature in the beam. Pre-drilling the ply and piloting the beams, those locations now make it easy to fix the ply to the beams using self-drilling screws that I slightly stagger to stop any rocking of the ply on the beam itself. Now pre-located, from one end each ply strip is now removed to fasten up some garden mesh, which in turn holds up 50mm of premium sheep wool insulation that we obtain from a company called Chimney Sheep. Once in place, the mesh can be pulled taut for a perfectly even surface. Being an easy to follow build, no contours are planned for the ceiling of the van, and we will be building one long run of overhead cupboards along the offside wall. Made from wood, the cupboard top line was fixed in place, from which we could easily mount our acoustic panels, screwing through the felt into the ply either side of the metal beam for a strong fix and avoiding a thermal bridge. With the ceiling finished, attentions were turned to the bedroom window, walls and surround. Measurements were made to build a frame around the window to a depth matching the van's sides to the bedroom's inner wall. Strips of wood were cut and screwed and bonded in place until we had a frame that bridged from one panel support to another. One support we had removed from the window install and relocated, bonding in place with polyurethane sealant. I had an idea for creating curves within the frame to match the window.
Jesus. Oh, for fuck's sake.
But decided neighbour Paul might have more of a clue and the tools to do it properly.
What's that then?
Holes were cut in timber to the radius of our window curves. A square was cut around the hole, which gave us perfect quadrants to glue into place within the frame.
Nice. So now we've got the window frame in, we can make the side wall, the side panel, which is the foot of the bed and the whole panel that fits that side of the wall. Now the van's framework again provides every fixing point for us. What we're going to be doing is using this piece of wood as demonstration, is fitting a panel which slots at the back of the angle bed frame that we've popped in, and fits and runs right the way along this section here of the van with these hexagonal holes in. That will then line up to the window frame, which is slightly out at the moment, but because of the framework that we've put it on, we can put some packers behind there, or shave bits of wood off in fact, in order to cockle that and move it to actually fit the panel. So we're going to make the panel now. The only problem we've got is down at this little corner here, we need to shave out a little bit of the back of the actual panel itself. The panel's going to be 9mm ply, and all it's going to be is a perfect square from the bed frame vertically upwards like so. Once that panel is the right shape and we've fitted it, what we're then going to do is pop outside and open this window and scribe the inside of it so we can cut out this oval section of the window. Right, let's crack on.
The window frame and wall was removed, and the hard-to-reach areas lined up and scribed, and window hole cut out with a little help. A batten was fixed to the bottom of the panel to correctly space the panel from the angled bed frame mount, to a point almost ready to cover with stretch fabric. Nikki applied varnish to the rear of the panel to protect the wood from any damp, and I set to priming the frames prior to a top coat. The kitchen island again becomes the ideal place to continue working from dusk. On the flat surface, we can now apply stretch carpet to the sidewall. Contact adhesive is applied to each mating surface, and in two halves the surfaces are matched up, and a rolling pin finds an alternative use. On the flip side, corners are trimmed and the carpet is rolled over the edges to make neat and glued into place, as is the window area. We always trim the van side with Reflectix. Pointing out, this aids the reflection of heat back out in hot climates, considering the comfort of ourselves and especially our dog. Reflectix can also work on the opposite side of our insulation pointing inwards to aid keeping heat in. But this is less of a concern for us as we have economical heating methods and prefer to keep our sheep wool in direct contact with the van side to eliminate any condensation issues. However, saying that, sheep's wool is very difficult to hold in place around a window, so here we apply Dodo thermal liner and top it with recycled bottle insulation. With the window frame in place and aligned to match perfectly, the window frame is now lifted and screwed into place, adding an alloy angle strip which will become the support for the overhead lockers. The same process was applied to the opposite side, fitting a slightly larger panel. On this side is likely to be where you rest your head, free from clouting lockers as you get up and down. It's nice to sit up in bed, so additional brackets were added to the frame of the van to allow the fabrication and fitting of an angled headboard, complete with reading lights. Building a bed away from the back doors leaves a very useful gap, and by building a decorative divide between the bed and back doors can allow the fitting of concealed thermal curtains, covering the rear of the van's light clusters that become part of the garage area. We do this by profiling the sides of the van with two scrap pieces of ply and joining them in situ with two battens of wood put centrally for easy removal. This profile can now be transferred to a sheet of ply, scribed and then cut. Impossible to fit in one piece, it goes in the van in two halves to check all aligns well. We now turn our attention to creating a framework for our overhead lockers. The wood that we put up to align our ceiling covering becomes the top anchor point of the framework as we measure down to acquire the correct height. Profiles are cut and checked and secured to the upper part of the frame and distanced for perfect door gapping. Secured back in place, we can scribe the cupboard's outline on the bed divide, which will become the cupboard end. Back on the bench, we can now cut out the access to the back door windows and curtain area, and after checking all fits and aligns well, we trial fit our cupboard baseboard to the frame, linked to the underneath of the aluminium angle that we fixed to the top of the bedside window wall earlier. Back on the bench, we can make adjustments for squareness before gluing and screwing the components together. All components are now prepared for a top coat of paint, starting with a sand, a prime coat, another sand, and finally a top coat of Rust-Oleum dark grey. The locker frame can now be put in place. Bolts are fixed with spreader washers fixed to the wooden lats that we have fixed to the ribs of the van's roof. Two bolts are fixed either side of the metal beams for a strong fix and avoiding a thermal bridge. Nikki and I now install a layer of 75mm sheep wool insulation, held back with the garden mesh extended from the ceiling. And now comes the easiest cupboard backing of all, as we bend flat pieces of PVC sheet and literally pop them into place between the locker top and bottom. Cut larger than the diagonal, they fix in tight and strong with a perfect curve to follow the contour of the van side. As easy to pop out as pop in, the PVC sheet allows easy access to monitor the insulation and perhaps access systems. The bed divide can now be fixed in place, bolting securely to the extruded alloy of the bed frame, and later screwed into the overhead locker and opposite fixing point. That now completes the bed over garage build, leaving only the cupboard doors to fix, which we will cover in a future vlog. So how did this bed over garage build compare to our own? Well, there are many similarities to this build and that of our own. However, working to a budget, there's been some compromises perhaps on styling and materials used. As we separate our back doors in our bed area to improve comfort and create better build lines, in our van we created 2 deep bedside lockers for extra storage and to create a handy bedside table. In this build, we have filled the gap with a handy bedside shelf, ideal for placing a phone to be charged or a morning coffee. Both vans have overhead cabinets above the foot of the bed. Ours have extruded aluminium adorned with bamboo doors, compared to a wooden framework of stud wall battens. Similar insulations have been used on the bedside walls, but the walls themselves differ from being a carpet-coated ply over a painted box frame, compared to laminated birch ply with feature edging and colour-coded surface. And here's a reminder of how we did that. Off came the insulation that had served us well over the summer months, and on went one solid piece of 15mm birch ply cut to the window profile. Offcuts of the same 15mm birch ply were then scribed and cut to match the one-piece frame. Larger pieces formed the full curves of the ends, and thinner strips were cut to bridge between them. PVA glue was applied to the initial frame, and all pieces built up on top. Before clamping into place, nail gunned, and allowed to dry overnight. This process occurred several times to build up the frame to the desired thickness. Once dried, the frame was mounted up to 9mm birch ply that will form our bedroom wall, then scribed and put out. It will now be bonded before preparations for fitting. So, what has this part of the build cost, and how much have we spent so far? This part of the build, to include the acoustic ceiling, has cost approximately £1,038. I say approximately because some of the products used have already been purchased that were used in previous aspects of the build, and some of those parts will probably be used in future aspects of the build as well. Could this aspect of the build have been done any cheaper? Of course it could. For a start, omitting any bunk windows would save a stack of money and effort in creating those sidewalls. And that acoustic panelling isn't cheap, but is such an advantage of part of a fully venting insulation system, which I will always favour. This brings our build total to £4,248. In part 5 of our vanbuild series, we will be adopting B&Q drawer fronts in order to finish our overhead cabinets. Start in the habitat zone by laying a floor and building frameworks for fitting a kitchen unit. We'll also build a chaise to house our chest fridge and dual-core composting toilet. We will be fitting and trialling a 2 kilowatt diesel heater from Nordcap, but first finishing the garage to habitat bulkhead so all frames can be lined up before a coat of protective paint, and then permanently fixing down our floor covering. We hope you found this vlog enjoyable and useful, so please do that thing of liking and subscribing to encourage us to continue to run this channel. Look forward to seeing you next time. Ha 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 ha.